you're never alone, and I mean that in a good way. That everybody has guardian angels, and the more you embrace and Protestant, you've got guardian angels, and they don't really care what your religion is, and they love you, and they've been with you across lifetimes.
Meet Logan Taylor. He is the Bible Belt medium. He's 22 years old, and he can talk to dead people. Like, what was the break from, okay, I have these abilities, I can do this, to, you know what, this could be my career. I can really do this for a living.
It's funny. It's kind of ironic, but my friend bought us tickets to go see a very, very famous museum do a gallery reading. And we went to this event, and it was in like an auditorium thing. And she came out and she started reading, but as she was reading people, I was reading them with her, and I was reading them just a beat ahead of what she was reading them. And I left there, and I told my friend, I said, I'm going to do this because I can do this. You know, because before that, you're so insecure. It's one of those things you're like, how do I do this? So I said, you know what? I'm going to do this. So I started by reading people out in public, which is the scariest thing in the world. It's literally could go one of two ways. But I would just read my waiters. I read a police officer who was pulling me over. I got out of the ticket. I would read just strangers, and then word spread in my little town, and then people would start coming to me and paying me, and then it's like, here we are 3 years later, and it's a 6-month waiting list. So it's a crazy thing how it works. And when you get to a point where you're like, okay, I can do this, that's when you start going up to them, saying, okay, I've got a message for you. And it's scary as crap, but that moment where they start crying and they're like, oh my gosh, you're so right. That's the moment when you're like, this is what I would do.
How do you, when you say embrace it, do you just mean like just kind of go with it, or how do you kind of, I guess, develop them or like open up more to your gifts?
Well, first off, my number one thing is I protect myself. That's I have to protect myself, spiritually, emotionally, physically, because it does. I mean, it will. I always pray to God or whatever you believe in to really shower me with light and love, and really make sure the message that I deliver is exactly what my client needs to hear. And then as far as developing it, I started out by creating signs and symbols in like a journal. I had a journal, and I would write down all the signs and symbols that made sense to me. And that was kind of my way of letting Spirit know, okay, this is what I need you to show me, and this is what means this. Now, every time I do a reading, I get a new symbol, and I'm like, what is that? And then it'll make sense after a minute. But that's kind of the way they deliver messages. It's different for everybody, but it's a challenge. But I think your job as a medium, or your job as a psychic, is not necessarily to be a vessel. It's almost to be an interpreter. You have to interpret what you're hearing, seeing, and feeling in a way that makes sense to your client. That's kind of really what it's all about.
Yeah. How does your mediumship like affect your everyday life?
Well, a couple different ways. Now I can't. I can't even go out to like Walgreens and get toilet paper without people being like, hey, look, like strangers will come up to me all the time wanting a reading. And it's like, I was in Nashville the other day, and this is so bad, but we were out to dinner, and a group of my friends, and it was, I had a drink or two, and all of a sudden, this group comes up to me, and they're like, are you Logan? I said, yes. Like, this is so-and-so, they really need a message. And I'm like, like, okay. Well, so it's changed in that way that everywhere I go, people know me. And that was the thing, like, before I was kind of embarrassed about it because I'm a children's theater director as well. So it was something that I didn't really want broadcast everywhere just for the people who didn't really agree with it. But I'm out. So, so that really has changed. I mean, just everybody knowing what I'm doing. And then also, everywhere I go now, it's like Spirit knows they can come to me. And so they do come to me, and so it's, but I've gotten to the point where, because I do read so much, I've gotten to the point where I can shut it off if I have to out in public because it is so, it can be a lot. It's a lot to just, but I do, still to this day, if I'm in a public place with a lot of people, I'm very anxious the whole time. Mm-hmm. And it's just because there's a million things going on in my head, but I'm trying to learn how to shut it off. But I think once you embrace it, once you say, God, when you tell God, look, God, I'm ready to see it. I'm ready to know what you need me to know. The floodgates open, and it changes life-changing, not only for your client, but also for you. It really does open your eyes to a whole new world, as the Lord mermaid would say. That's not the Little Mermaid, that's Aladdin.
Who are some of your favorite mediums that people know about?
I really I like John Edwards. I like his style just because he is so, he's so. Sorry, I like John Edwards because his style is he's mellow, he's cool, he doesn't have to be over the top to get his message across. Mm-hmm. And then I really who doesn't like Teresa?
I love her.
Everybody loves her, and she is she's really, really good, and I relate to her in a lot of ways because we have similar personalities, but she's good, and she's actually the one that I went to see. I've seen her 2 or 3 times.
Do you have a community of psychics or mediums that you keep in touch with regularly, or when you want to go and develop more skills? Because I know a lot of people, they'll start off maybe clairvoyant and clairaudient, and then next thing that now they're medical intuitive, or depending on what they're learning.
Right. Well, I do have a very small group. It's like an underground group in people who, actually one of the women who helped teach me my gifts. It's a very small group of people here in McMinnville, but there are 6 or 7 who will get together every once in a while and have a little powwow. And, it's one of those things that I think surrounding yourself with people who are like-minded is a good thing, but at the same time, isolating yourself in this respect is a really good thing because it allows you to really grow in yourself. I think, and that was my biggest challenge, was trying to learn from other people, whether it was a famous medium or whether it was somebody down the street. You almost want to replicate some of their techniques for a while, but you really just have to do your own thing. Because it is so different for every single person that it's good to go and kind of have your little community of helpers and friends, but it's really important to learn a lot of it on your own because everybody has their different way of interpreting, everybody has their different way of communicating with spirit. So to really reflect in yourself is really important.
Oh, wow, that's great advice. So how do you think millennials can use their spiritual awakening, or how can they?
They asked me, they said, what do you tell a young person? And I'll tell somebody 2 things. Always be brave because it is so worth it in the end. And then most importantly, it's a quote by Abraham Lincoln, and it is, whatever you are, be a good one. So to me, that means gay, be gay and own it and be proud. If you're medium, be medium and be proud of you. Own it. If you're plus size, own that. If you are, whatever you are in this life, you need to own it. Whether you talk to dead people or, whatever that is. Whatever you are, you have to own that, because suppressing who you are and suppressing that is setting not just you back, it's setting all of us back who want so badly to be brave, because we are stronger in numbers. So my advice to any young person would be, just be brave, because going forward, we only have each other, and we really are all in this together. So I think there are a lot of us out there. There are a lot of millennials who are very into it, but it's just applying ourselves to that and going for it.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you so much, Logan.
Yes,
Could you tell me what this crystal does?
I get that question a lot. A crystal is a tool, just like let's say a shovel. What does a shovel do? No, a shovel leans up against the wall until you pick it up, at which point it helps you focus your energy. So all these different crystals have different energies, different colors. You know how sound has a vibration? Well, color has vibration too. So this rose quartz, for instance, has a heart vibration. So if you're wanting to open yourself up for a relationship, for love to come into your life, for somebody to be nicer to you and kinder, you want to have that vibration. So it's a lot of the reasons we don't have affirmations or magic or goals go well is we forget to focus. And you focus on what the area you are working on. And this happens to be heart chakra. Green is heart, it's more the healing money. It's all Venus energy in the heart chakra. And then as you come down, there's solar plexus. The lower chakras are going down towards the earth. They're heavier vibrations. Doesn't mean bad just because it's lower. Doesn't mean you always want to be in the higher vibrations if you float off the earth if you were. So the protection and the grounding are the ones at the end, the black. And then red is also a first chakra. That's passion. Then orange is creativity. Yellow is your solar plexus, how you are out in the world. Then we get to the pinks and the greens for the heart. Communications, light blue, turquoise. Then over here is your third eye. And then seventh chakra has purple and white, spirituality, connection to spirit. Does that make some sense?
Yes.
Is there a certain one you're looking for? Well, I'm here with you.
I was looking at tiger's eye.
Tiger's, oh, I love tiger's eye.
Yeah.
That's your solar plexus.
This is Taylor Thompson with KundaTV. I am here at the wonderful Phoenix and Dragon bookstore interviewing the lovely owner, Candace Apple. So, have you experienced a spiritual awakening?
Yes, the first time I remember that, I'd studied in psychology, Maslow, and he talks about peak experiences. And so I go, what's that like? Well, when you have one, you know it. And I was at Emory at a concert, the Glenn Memorial, and just really remember the feel of sitting there. It was a folk concert. And a woman sang a song about being a coal miner's wife in Kentucky and the struggles she had in her life. And there was that moment when I realized we're different, but we're really all the same. And it was just this overwhelming heart opening to her and all women in the world and the world. I mean, it's just this moment that was a pretty amazing feeling. And I think that's one of my core philosophies of life. Since that moment, I just really got it, how connected we all are.
Mm-hmm.
Had that experience was I worked one of my first jobs in community mental health was working at the Atlanta Penitentiary, and it was federal maximum security penitentiary. Pretty much everybody in there was going to be there 25 years or more, and I worked in the hospital area. I was testing inmates as they came into the penitentiary to see if they needed to go in the locked ward for mental problems. And there was a dental clinic right around the corner from me, and they had a metaphysical study group. They were very interested in astral projection since they were going to be there a while. And my job was to connect with the Foundation of Truth. It was one of the older metaphysical study groups here in Atlanta. And I would make appointments for them to come in and do the classes with them. And one day they said, well, would you like spiritual protection in your office? Okay, couldn't hurt. It's not like there was a whole lot of other protection. It was not the safest environment. And so I had a client in the office. He was having to redo a test, and he was getting ready for parole, and he was nervous. His mom was coming to visit. He was agitated, and he wasn't wanting to leave. And finally, my boss came in, and it was time for us to leave for lunch, and he went away like he was going back to his area. And that day, he then had hidden and then killed another woman. And I realized there was no logical reason that I was still alive. I had turned my back on him 3 times during that morning. He had told people afterwards that he had 2 knives in his boots and he had come to kill me, and he didn't. And it was that moment that I said, okay, I'm here for some reason. I don't necessarily know why, but if I'm still on this earth, there's something I need to be doing with my life, significant, to help the world, help people. And so I continued in community mental health, but I was still searching for what that real core issue that I was to be working with was.
Wow.
Well, when I was in community mental health, I had worked with adults and children with developmental disabilities that weren't even able to go to special education classes. And then I'd worked in the mental health centers with people with schizophrenia that had just recently been discharged from a life in Milledgeville practically. And so there was a lot, we were always sort of stuck in a back corner in the basement for the center or someplace that wasn't very full of light. And at that point in my life, I was starting to feel like I was a sanity enforcer. The main issue was to convince people they should take their medication, their Thorazine, so they could act normal and not be an inconvenience or bothering people that were normal. I began to feel my role was more of a sanity enforcer, that the idea was try to convince people to take their medication, like Thorazine, things that would make them act normal and thus not upset the other people in the community so much. And as I began to look at that, some examples just didn't feel like that was the answer. One of my young women was upset because her dead mother had been coming to visit her. And she wasn't upset about that. She was upset that they ended up having an argument and there was conflict between them and the mom wasn't going to come back. She'd been giving her daughter advice about child rearing and it was appreciated. But then her daughter said to her one time, well, why do you always ask about the grandchildren? You never ask about me. And they got in an argument. And it was like, no, I don't think Thorazine's the answer to that. She was really dealing with issues of her grief with her mother and her mother's energy, trying to connect and help her. And I realized at that point that I wanted to respect people's reality. People sometimes felt that they'd been abducted by UFOs. Had they not? Was it in an altered consciousness? Was it in a dream state? Was it a case of a way of survival from abuse where they had actually disassociated and gone out of their body into another consciousness and connected with some UFO consciousness? I sort of got it that I didn't have the answers of one answer of what reality was. Each person had their own way. And I think that's evolved in my way of seeing that people have their own spiritual paths. It's for me not saying, well, this is the way. You know, each person finds their own way. So I had taken a break from community mental health and was working at the distributor, the book distributor of the books we have. And at the same time, I was at West Georgia doing my master's thesis. And the theory that I was working on was that women in our culture don't end up being very comfortable and not having very much time alone. that were either involved in work or school or families or husbands and with friends. All these people in our life start giving us our definition of who we are. And that it actually takes some time to work with your own creative essence and to find from within who you are. So I committed to doing some more writing in my life, and that was going to be part of my thesis. And I started writing a fairy tale about a princess and about a caterpillar. And then she was the first one to see that he was a butterfly, and then he flew away. And she had a broken heart. And in the story, she then goes to find him, but goes through the woods and the swamps and all sorts of challenges and finds herself stronger, and then meets him as the butterfly prince. And he had this magic cloak, and it was beautiful like a butterfly, and she could fly anywhere and do anything with it, and he was going to give it to her, but then she'd never see him again. So instead, she went home crying and brokenhearted again, and then the fairies helped her and showed her she could weave her own cloak. And it wasn't the butterfly sunshine colors, it was the colors of the moth. And it was golds and silvers and bronze. And when she finished, she realized that she had reclaimed her own power. So a week later, I'm driving to work, stopped at a stop sign, thank goodness, and had a full-blown vision, Phoenix and Dragon bookstore. And it was a little house up on a hill, and the most amazing part, it was full of life. It wasn't stuck in the basement anymore. And I went back to my job, and my best friend there, I said, Apollonia, I just had this vision, and described it to her, and she said, this is February of 1987. September 21st is a solar eclipse, and I'm going to be in your bookstore starting my counseling practice. And I think it's best if I go in and resign right now, effective September 21st. I said, Apollonia, it's only a vision. And she went in and resigned. And September 21st, we were painting the last room in the store.
Wow.
Of New Age interest, and they called it cultural creatives. It was the people that were interested in women's rights, psychology, spirituality. And one of the things about that is that demographically, it was middle-aged women, 40 to 60. And being here in Sandy Springs, that ended up being our clientele for several years. That was the core demographics. And what I found that people would come to the store perhaps the first time when they were in life crisis. And it was maybe they'd been busy on their school and job and family and having the American dream. And then either they got a cancer diagnosis, someone in their family died, their dog died, they got abducted by UFOs. It could be any kind of crisis. More and more young people and millennials are involved in the store, and they come at a younger age. It's not always because of a life crisis. It's more spiritual searching, and from a much younger age, it seems, being interested in what is their spiritual path, what is really their life path, not just get out of school and just get a job because it's a job, but what's important to them, what do they feel spiritually is important, and how can they be involved in the community. There seems to be even a lot more interest in that generation about their place in the community and how they can help and be more involved. So that's been pretty exciting to see.
It's amazing. Do you have any advice for millennials who would like to explore their spiritual path, or what would be a good place to start?
A good place to start in this world is with mindfulness. And that can be meditation. There's a lot of chaos going on, and sometimes to really look within, you need that quiet moment. But it can also be everyday life, being in the present. There's so many books now that talk about that, and it is important, because if you're thinking about the past and what didn't work in your life, or thinking about the future and what you wish would work, you're missing the experience of the moment. And I think people have been discovering that that's very important as far as really connecting to their inner self and to the world and the community, and also to their higher power. And I think with that, seeing the people that come here seem to be really interested in exploring many different paths and what's available, not just this is what I taught and this is the truth and this is the only path, but being more open to exploring what other people think, breeding many different varieties of traditions, and then really choosing what feels right for them. Start your meditation would be using a sound therapy, like a singing bowl, and you can just clear the energy in the room, and that helps you as you repeat the same practice. They call meditation a practice, because as you do it over and over, your mind begins to attune to that vibration of meditation. So you can do that, or you can also make it sing. It's sort of a way of telling your brain, okay, it's time to relax. It's time to go into that meditation space. Personal belief system, I finally found a word for it. It's called transspiritual, which means I really believe there's a core energy, call it whatever you like to, God, higher spirit, higher consciousness, and that every religion, every spiritual path is searching for the same thing in the middle, the core that's the same, but they get there different ways. They may have it different names, they may have different ceremonies, different rituals, but even as we come from this Easter season, so many religions have a spring ceremony that started way before Christianity that relates to rebirth and springtime. Just as in the winter at Christmas, there's this winter solstice, and people are having celebrations about the shortest day of light, and now new light's coming, and there's new hope for the spring to come. So there's traditions that are in very different religions, but they're all speaking in different languages, but speaking similar truths. And I think part of that for me personally is also realizing we are all interconnected. Some people call it the global brain. Some people say that's how we're related psychically, that there's something called the Akashic Records or the global brain, that if we tap into, we're connected even on a mental, spiritual level. So for me, compassion is one of the core essences of spirituality. And there's an organization, Compassion Atlanta, and then an international organization, the Charter for Compassion, that I'm on the board and work with them, and feel that teaching in school and in part of our spiritual practice, some people's spiritual practice is directly with God, with spirit. And for me personally, I feel that my spiritual practice is this consciousness that however I treat another person, they're part of me. I mean, you don't even have to be altruistic in this concept to be nice to other people, because if that's part of you, you're harming yourself if you don't respect and are compassionate to others. So I think the Charter of Compassion, Karen Armstrong, interfaith author, she came up with this at a TED Talk and won a grant, and her concept being, do unto others as you would have others do unto you. It's a core principle of at least 21 different religions in the world. And it's can also be looked at as a core of ethics. You don't have to be religious to believe that concept. So that's the path that I personally try to follow, and feel that whatever path people are finding, they can find some of these core truths. Our tagline for the store is celebrating the human spirit, and we all have our personal spirit, and we all have our connection through spirit.
I'm Taylor, an empath, an artist, and spiritual teacher, and I am in the midst of a spiritual awakening. So many millennials all over the world are asking themselves, who am I? Why am I here? And what am I supposed to do? Some of them are experiencing frustration, anxiety, and depression out of the fear of the future. What will become of me? They ask. What happens when millions of millennials discover their natural gifts and talents to share with humanity? Kunda, love and light. in action.